my very first bass player was someone named Jay Lenhart. I got to, here we go, connections again. My dad, the trombone player, when I'm moving to New York, says, well, listen, look up Cy Coleman. He was at the famous Broadway writer, although he wrote some great jazz standards like Witchcraft. And he and my dad were in a band together in about 1947 or 1948, a summer job. And my mom was working her way through Hunter College, which is in the Bronx in New York. And she was assigned to the band, serving the band the dinner. And so here was this summer in New York. It sounds like a novel. And my father always boasted, well, Cy Coleman had his eye on your mom, but I got her. And I'm saying, you mean Cy Coleman could have been my father? I could have been in a Broadway show. I could have been a contender. But I'm not complaining. So I went to visit Cy, and he was very cordial. He took me out to lunch. He said, what can I do to help you? I played some things for him. I actually played a couple of my original songs. And I think his nephew at the time was helping him with the publishing side of things because they had their own publishing company. And I think just to make me feel good, they took one of my songs.
Which one? What was it called?
I wouldn't even tell you at this point. It never went running. I think he just said, well, it shows promise. It was, part poppy, but then it had an augmented 11th in it, so it just didn't make it. But I said, well, the first thing I guess I'd like to do is get started with some musicians. Why I didn't think to say, well, I'd like to be in one of your Broadway shows. Yeah. Why don't you give me an audition? No, I didn't think of that. So he looks through his book, and he gives me the name Jay Lenhart, who was at the time, even at that time, one of the busiest studio guys, and also a great jazz player. And from there plays with some of the great instrumentalists, but also played with Mel Torme and Lena Horne.
And what was Mel Torme like?
Well, I didn't play with Mel Torme, but he did. But I can still tell you what he was like, but I won't now. Although very, very cordial. And also, through another musician friend, I got to meet and hear George Duvivier, one of the great bass players. And when I got a gig, this friend said, well, why don't you try George? And I said, what are you kidding? George Duvivier? Why would he work with me? Why not? You have a gig, tell him what it pays. I said, well, okay. So I call up, and this lady answers the phone. I said, oh, excuse me, would George Duvivier be there? And she says, oh, just a moment. And then I hear, oh, Sonny. And I thought, oh, my God, George Duvivier has a mother. And it just made me relax. And he came to the phone, and he'd remembered me from meeting me, and probably I was sitting in somewhere, and I said, well, I have this gig. It was at actually a hotel that was starting a jazz. It was just a duo gig called the Conservatory. And so I told him where it was. I told him what it paid. My God, I don't know, maybe like $150 or something. Let me look in my book. And I'm going, oh, God, he's going to let me down easy. Comes back. What time? Well, yes, okay. I will be there at such and such a time. And I'm going, oh, my God. Now what do I do? So the night of the gig, I show up. He comes, and we don't really have a place to rehearse. There's a little room upstairs where you put your coats, and he put his bass case. And he said, okay, all right, what would you like to play? And I'm going, oh, well, okay. So I just take out these scraps of paper that I had written some lines and some chords, and he doesn't even take the bass out. He looks at this sheet of music that I had scrawled on, and he goes and he sings. Do, 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 do. He looks up. Dear, do you really want to go there? Are you sure? Oh, well, I don't know. Let's see. He sings some more. And he goes, da, 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 da. Oh, do you want to go there? And that was our rehearsal. So we play our first set. And we play that particular tune, and I play, and I go where I'm used to going. And he just kind of gives me a side glance. And then, okay, and I realize, okay, I didn't make that. And then we do a second chorus, and I'm feeling a little more confident, but my fingers still go to that same place what I'm used to. And then by the third chorus, I make the adjustment, and he just went. And that was the best lesson I could have ever had.
Wow, that sounds amazing. So you had quite
and he did that gig with me when he was available as much as he could. And you learn from that, and I learned how to listen. Let him guide with the line that he's playing, and then I could play chords and realize, okay, that makes more sense. Sometimes I really stuck to my guns and say, okay, maybe this is more correct for what he thinks, but I like the sound of this.
Good.
But nonetheless, it was wonderful, and he used to drive everywhere in a Cadillac. Every year he would buy a new Cadillac, and he was famous for driving cross country, and sending postcards to people.
Aww.
And I still have some of them.
That's nice. So when did you start playing in the Waldorf Astoria?
Oh, not until, I've played many hotels. I've played just about every major hotel, mob joint, Chinese restaurant that had jazz. Just about all of them, or even department stores like Lord & Taylor. But it took till the 90s to get to the Waldorf, and I remember I'd actually filled in there once in a while at Peacock Alley, but this main job, my very first day, I had, again, it was a milestone day, because your wonderful Marion McPartland, who I believe now is, what is it, MB, member of the British Empire? OBE, okay, yes. Had a wonderful radio program that was broadcast nationally called Piano Jazz. And it was the first time that I had been asked to be a guest on the show, which is quite an honor because she had all of the top great piano players on there, but she also used the program to introduce someone a little new. And so that day, we taped the show, and I walked from the studio to the Waldorf and just, played the evening. At this point, the Cole Porter piano was actually in the lobby area, all by itself with ropes around it, just like a little tourist attraction. And they didn't even have a bar. You could see people checking in. It was sort of an interim period. But anyway, from that day, I think it was like maybe around 1994, I stayed on in various regimes and they'd moved the piano various places up until just a couple of years ago, 2 or 3 years ago.
Wow. So you've been touring, you've been to Japan, isn't it?
My first time in Japan, because there was finally a chance for me to get away for 3 months. And I played mostly in Tokyo, and a kind of an inside place for Japanese, for anyone, but that was not, you couldn't get real Japanese food there. It was kind of a fusion of French and European, and they specialized in jazz, wine, and the last part, I guess I didn't really want to know because I thought maybe it was in a separate room, cigars. And, you had men in tuxedos serving them cigars on silver platters.
Wow.
But it was a wonderful opportunity. I played 6 nights a week. Some of it was solo and some of it was with a rhythm section. I had a very, very good bass player who actually had studied at North Texas State in New York, in the United States, which is one of the top jazz schools. And he spoke English, so that was a big help. And I knew 2 people before I left there. One who is a jazz journalist and particularly loves singers, and he has reviewed just about all my albums. I never know what he said because they were always in Japanese and didn't seem to make sense to translate them. They looked better in Japanese, and I could say it was a rave. And another lady, her name Ruriko Shiwazawa, who is a absolute energy force in supporting the music of Frank Sinatra. And she has a little club with her husband she calls Albert. And it's a little haven. And it's kind of like what you have here in Swansea. A group of like-minded spirits, men, women, some men whose wives are not that interested in jazz, or some ladies whose husbands aren't, but they all come together. They meet at this place, Albert. They listen to music. She has a piano. Sometimes she has performers, and then they go around and they hear music everywhere. And they have a vocal jazz appreciation society that meets once a month in some other little club. And they all come around. They might be a topic. They bring recordings, and they talk about their favorite recordings. And they all know each other. And I got to know them as well. And they came and supported me at my gig, and I started teaching some of them, because a lot of them are already singers who perform, and some of them have no interest in actually performing for a living, but they just do it because they love these songs.
Wow.
So it was a wonderful experience.
Oh, lovely. And so after here, you'll be going to Ronnie Scott's.
My first time at Ronnie Scott's.
Are you excited?
I am excited. I've been there just once before the renovation, and because I mostly played, the Pete's on Dean Street, and a few other places in London. But I went there this past Sunday to hear the Brubeck Sons do this Brubeck Legacy, so I got to see the room in action, and my goodness, they sure pack them in there. I don't know if I will pack them in there, although I understand the reservations are pretty good.
Good.
Yeah, pretty good.
I'm sure you will.
It's a Sunday. It's a Sunday in July, and I got worries, and this weather might be too good. It would be so good that, nobody will want to be inside. So I will find out if, as Noel Coward says, mad dogs and Englishmen go out in the noonday sun, or whether they actually stay in the darkness of a jazz club.
I think probably I'm
But
going
I
for
hope
that
they'll
one.
come.
Yeah, I'm sure they will. Well, thank you so much for talking to me. And
Well, thank you, Amy, and keep singing.
I will. Always.
And swinging.
And swinging. I got the swinging down. Yeah.
You got it down.
I got it down.
Okay.
Good luck with the rest
See
of your
you
tour,
soon.
Daryl.
Thank you.